Good morning, boys and girls, and welcome to today's reading lesson. So, before we get started, we have to go over our I can statement. Our I can statement for today is to describe characters, setting, and major events in a story using key details. Okay, so it's RL 1.3. So we've been working on this just a little bit, but we've been describing characters and we've been talking a little bit about setting and events. So what we're going to be talking about today is mostly the setting. So we are going to talk about kind of how the setting helps you understand the events in the story, but mostly we're going to be talking about the setting. So I want you to go ahead and take a look at this anchor chart. Setting. Setting can be three different things. It can be the time. So when? Is it in the morning? Is it in the afternoon? Is it at night? Is it a time of year? So are you talking about, the months? Was it in January? It doesn't have to just be the time of the day. It could also be like the time of the year or something like that. Then there's place. So you're talking about where. So where does the story take place? So could it be at a house, a boat, a school, a park? Any of those are places, right? Environment. So what was the setting like? Was it hot, dark, rainy, breezy? Okay, so all of those things describe the setting. Now I am going to go ahead and go over the events because sometimes the setting can help you understand what's happening in the story. So events, what happened? Who, what, where, when, why, how? And then you're thinking about first, next, then, and then finally. So you're thinking about what happened first in the story, and then we're going to be looking at how the setting can help you understand the story. So the book we're reading today is one of my absolute favorite stories of all time. It is Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, written by Judy Barrett and drawn by Ron Barrett. So Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs. Now pay attention to the setting in this story. Okay. We were all sitting around the big kitchen table. It was Saturday morning, pancake morning. Mom was squeezing oranges for juice. Henry and I were betting on how many pancakes we could each eat. And Grandpa was doing the flipping. Seconds later, something flew through the air, headed towards the kitchen ceiling, and landed right on Henry. After we realized that the flying object was only a pancake, we all laughed, even Grandpa. Breakfast continued quite uneventfully. All the other pancakes landed in the pan, and all of them were eaten, even the one that landed on Henry. That night, touched off by the pancake incident at breakfast, Grandpa told us the best tall tale bedtime story he'd ever told. Across an ocean, over lots of huge bumpy mountains, across 3 hot deserts and 1 smaller ocean, there lay the tiny town of Chew and Swallow. In most ways, it was very much like any other tiny town. It had a main street lined with stores, houses with trees and gardens around them, a schoolhouse, about 300 people, and some assorted cats and dogs. But there were no food stores in the town of Chew and Swallow. They didn't need any. The sky supplied all the food they possibly wanted. The only thing that was really different about Chew and Swallow was its weather. It came 3 times a day, at breakfast, at lunch, and dinner. Everything that everyone ate came from the sky. Whatever the weather served, that was what they ate. But it never rained rain. It never snowed snow. And it never blew just wind. It rained things like soup and juice. It snowed mashed potatoes and green peas. And sometimes the wind blew in storms of hamburgers. The people could watch the weather report on television in the morning, and they would even hear a prediction for the next day's food. I don't know if you can see that. It says cloudy with a chance of meatballs. When the townspeople went outside, they carried their plates, cups, glasses, forks, spoons, knives, and napkins with them. That way, they would always be prepared for any kind of weather. If there were leftovers, and there usually were, the people took them home and put them in their refrigerators in case they got hungry between meals. So looking at this picture, right here, how would you describe what's going on in that picture? How would you describe that setting right there? That's right. They're all at a baseball field, it looks like, right? And they have their plates and their forks, and it must be time for, I think, dessert, because it looks like that's all different types of pie, right? So pie is falling from the sky. The menu varied. By the time they woke up in the morning, breakfast was coming down. After a brief shower of orange juice, low clouds of sunny side-up eggs moved in, followed by pieces of toast, butter, and jelly sprinkled down for all the toast. And most of the time, it rained milk afterwards. It's pretty interesting, right? Can you imagine if the weather was food? For lunch one day, frankfurters, already in their rolls, blew in from the northwest at about 5 miles an hour. There were mustard clouds nearby. Then the wind shifted to the east and brought in baked beans. A drizzle of soda finished off the meal. Dinner one night consisted of lamb chops, becoming heavy at times, with occasional ketchup. Periods of peas and baked potatoes were followed by gradual clearing, with a wonderful jello setting in the west. Check out that jello setting in the west. Look at that setting. Look at that illustration. Easy. The sanitation department of Chew and Swallow had a rather unusual job for a sanitation department. It had to remove the food that fell on the houses and sidewalks and lawns. The workers cleaned things up after every meal and fed all of the cats and dogs. Then they emptied some of it into the surrounding oceans for the fish and turtles and whales to eat. The rest of the food was put back into the earth so that the soil would be richer for the people's flower gardens. So they didn't let any food go to waste, huh? They made sure they used it all. Life for the town people was delicious until the weather took a turn for the worse. Now, if you can read this, but it says, spaghetti ties up the town. And it says, record-breaking pasta fall causes chaos. One day, there was nothing but gorgonzola cheese all day. All day, nothing but cheese. The next day, there was only broccoli, all overcooked. It was mushy broccoli. Mushy broccoli. Blech. And the next day, there were Brussels sprouts and peanut butter with mayonnaise. I don't know if you can see that little girl. She has a peanut butter. I don't think I would. Another day, there was pea soup fog. No one could see where they were going, and they could barely find the rest of the meal that got stuck in the fog. The food was getting larger and larger, and so were the portions. The people were getting frightened. Violent storms blew up frequently. Awful things were happening. One Tuesday, there was a hurricane of bread and rolls all day long and into the night. There were soft rolls and hard rolls, some with seeds and some without. There was white bread and rye and whole wheat toast, Most of it was larger than they had ever seen bread and rolls before. It was a terrible day. Everyone had to stay indoors. Roofs were damaged, and the sanitation department was beside itself. The mess took the workers 4 days to clean up, and the sea was full of floating rolls. Look at the floating rolls in the sea. To help out, the people piled up as much bread as they could in their backyards. The birds picked at it a bit, but it just stayed there and got staler and staler. So it got stale. Ugh. There was a storm of pancakes one morning and a downpour of maple syrup that nearly flooded the town. A huge pancake covered the school. No one could get it off because of its weight, so they had to close the school. Look how big that pancake is. Oh my goodness, they had to close the school because a pancake as big as a school fell on top of it. Lunch one day brought 15-inch drifts of cream cheese and jelly sandwiches. Everyone ate themselves sick, and the day ended with a stomachache. There was an awful salt and pepper wind accompanied by an even worse tomato tornado. Tomato tornado. Oh my goodness. People were sneezing themselves silly because it was salt and pepper, when you sniff in pepper, it makes you sneeze. So they were sneezing themselves silly and running to avoid the tomatoes. The town was a mess. There was seed and pulp everywhere. Look at that. It was a tomato tornado. Oh my goodness. A tomato tornado. Holy guacamole. The sanitation department gave up. The job was too big. Everyone feared for their lives. They couldn't go outside most of the time. Many houses had been badly damaged by giant meatballs. Stores were boarded up, and there was no more school for the children. So a decision was made to abandon the town of Chew and Swallow. It was a matter of survival. Check out the setting here. Let's think. When is the story taking place? What time of day does it look like? Looks like daytime, right? Where is it taking place? That's right, on Main Street of Chew and Swallow, right? Main Street of Chew and Swallow. And then what's the environment like? How would you describe it? Yeah, there's donuts and pancakes and meatballs. I would say it's messy, right? I think they're overwhelmed. There's lots of, look at that. There's like steak in this. Look how big those steaks are. And then there's just a mound of ice cream. Yes, it looks delicious, but that'd be sticky, right? And then there's just pizza and cheese and like alphabet soup. And that is one big food mess, right? That's how I describe that setting. The people glued together giant pieces of stale bread sandwich styled with peanut butter. They took the absolute necessities with them and set sail on their rafts for a new land. How would you describe this setting? Yeah, they're on the ocean. It's during the daytime. They made boats out of the food. There's stale bread. They're using cheese and pizza as sails. Look at that storm in the background. Oh my goodness. Looks like giant meatballs and Italian subs. After being afloat for a week, they finally reached a small coastal town, which welcomed them. The bread had held up surprisingly well enough for them to build temporary houses for themselves out of it. The children began school again, and the adults all tried to find places for themselves in the new land. The biggest change they had to make was getting used to buying food at the supermarket. They found it odd that the food was kept on shelves, packaged in boxes, cans, and bottles. How was the food packaged for you? Meat that had to be cooked was kept in large refrigerators. Nothing came down from the sky except rain and snow. The clouds above their heads were not made of fried eggs. No one had ever gotten hit by a hamburger again, and nobody dared to go back to Chew and Swallow to find out what had happened to it. They were too afraid. Look at that setting. They made a town out of their bread that they had on their boats. Henry and I were awake until the very end of Grandpa's story. I remember his goodnight kiss. The next morning, we woke up to see snow falling outside our window. We ran downstairs for breakfast and ate it a little faster than usual so we could go sledding with Grandpa. It's funny, but even as we were sliding down the hill, we thought we saw a giant pat of butter at the top, and we could almost smell mashed potatoes. So, doesn't the sun here look like a giant pat of butter on top of a mound of mashed potatoes? So the snow had fallen, right? And they went outside and they swear they could smell mashed potatoes. The end. Well, thank you so much for joining me for that story. Now what we're going to do is we're actually going to go over a particular setting from the book, and we're going to draw a picture and describe it. Okay, so what I have to do is I have to turn my lights off and I have to move you to another part of my classroom. So 1 second. So boys and girls, if you'd like to, you can go ahead and get out your notebook and a pencil, a sharpened pencil in your notebook. And we're going to go over a setting from the story. So one of my favorites from the story is this one right here, where it is the pea fog, the pea soup fog, and no one could see where they were going, and they could barely find the rest of the meal that got stuck in the fog. Because I think this is a really good illustration to talk about and the setting to talk about and describe. So I'm going to illustrate that setting here. Remember, it doesn't have to be perfect. I would like you to do the same. So your boys and girls. So he's upset, right? Because he's stuck in the pea soup fog and he cannot see where he's going, right? So now if I was to describe or identify it, I would say there was pea soup fog, right? Could not see. They're still in Chew and Swallow, right? Chew and swallow. It's a long word. You could say that was during the daytime, right? Because it was one day. So it's in the daytime, right? So it was in Chew and Swallow during the daytime, and it was pea soup fog, and they could not see. So that's what I would describe for this setting from Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs. Now, what you're going to be doing during your seesaw activity today. You actually will be talking about your favorite setting from the story, so you can pick your own settings. So you can go back and rewatch this video and see the settings that were in the story, so the different illustrations or the different times, the different events with different settings, and you're going to draw about it, and then you're going to write about it and describe it, kind of like what we just did there. But before we leave, I forgot to do this at the beginning. We need to go over our sight words for this week. So we're actually reviewing sight words this week. So I just kind of picked sight words that I knew that we all needed to work on. So the first word is number. Say it with me, number. The second word is people. Say it with me, people. The third word is made. Say it with me, made. The fourth word is where. Say it with me, where. And the last word is been. Say it with me, been. Well, fantastic job today, boys and girls. I'm super proud of you, and I can't wait to see how you describe your own favorite setting from the story. Bye.